Welcome. My name is Dr. Michael Matos. You're watching the Staff Room.
Walk, walk in, chest great, we don't play. Staff talk sharp like a quiz on a Monday. Whiteboard wars, yeah, we grade all day. If you can't take that heat, stay out the hallway. Hey, this is the Staff Room. Say it loud, say it loud. The Staff Room.
Let's get into it.
All right. Welcome to the Staff Room, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Michael Matos. I'm a 16-year teacher veteran. I have held many of titles such as crisis intervention, instructional coach, and I'm also an author. I've written a book called How Leaders Motivate Teachers in Real Classrooms. The Practitioner's Guide. You can find that link down below. It's a great book on how you as a school leader can use perception-based leadership to motivate your teachers. So story time. Part of this channel is really appealing to the masses in terms of educators and leaders. And one thing that we have stories. So today's a story about a situation that I had with a parent. And in this case, sometimes you parents, let me be honest with you, sometimes you are just delusional. For the most part, I love parents, but some of them are just so difficult, and funny, in this situation. We had a student, okay, we'll call him John. And John was a younger student, and he was a little different, but he's a great kid. So John would come to school. Excuse me. He would engage with his peers. He's very happy, and he's very, very, very polite. But he was just one of those students that you can tell was a little bit different. There's nothing wrong with that. Myself, I'm very different, and my social, I guess, appropriateness can be a little off at times, and that's good. That's what makes people, right? None of us are perfect, but John, he's a great kid. When you work in a school, a lot of times one of your roles could be to monitor gates, especially in today's climate with all of the bad things that happen on school grounds. So I every morning would monitor a gate. I would basically ride a golf cart and stuff, and I really do love people, and I do love kids. So I would, in many instances, go above and beyond and just do things that other people wouldn't do. Some parents might even think it was weird, but I genuinely just cared. And one of those things is there was a long walk between the gate and then where the students would get into the campus or onto the campus, right? And then most of the occasions in the mornings, the grass would be wet. So I would drive them back and forth on the cart, and every time a student come in, it was like a little taxi service, and it was cool. So the great thing about that is that you have time to get to know the kids, and I really got to know John, and he was genuinely a sweet kid. Now, John had some struggles within a couple of years that I've known him, and one of those struggles was he was a younger kid. He used to cry whenever it rained, just cry. Part of my job was to work with teachers that have difficult students and basically coach them on the most effective practices to educate those students, to help those students to regulate emotions, and to get them to a point where their confidence was strong enough, because many of them, it's what it kind of boils down to, is that self-perception, right? And the way that their experiences have hurt their confidence, but to get their confidence to a point where they can perform. So in this instance, I would always have to, de-escalate this young man, and he would just go off. He can go off in the cafeteria, in his room, walking on. He would just start crying. If it rained, he would start crying. And every time I talked to him, the reason was because when I was younger, my mom left me left me at school too long. His mom was just late, and it was raining, and I got stuck in the rain, and I was lost, and I didn't know what to do. Fair enough. Now, with that being said, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't last that long. It just doesn't. When the parents put things in place and the school puts things in place to help kids to process those, I guess, traumatic events, they typically don't last that long when it's something of this nature. Like if it's something else, if it's like abuse or something very traumatic, like, for example, I had a student that was left in a building after a hurricane. Like those things, they take forever, if ever. But in this case, it shouldn't last too long. And I'll give you a perfect example later. So I've had a lot of time with John, and I've had a lot of time with his parents, and his mom has always been a little different. And teachers, you know what I'm talking about when they're different. They just have this very weird outlook on things, and they don't want to hear anything you have to say. Excuse me. They don't want to hear anything you have to say. They just are. So I spent 2 years, well, a year and a half dealing with John and dealing with these episodes. And I met with Mom regularly, and the discussion was, Mom, I think it's attention. I truly think it's attention. It wasn't too long that I started to notice that Mom used to treat John a little bit differently. This is consistent with a lot of kids in the area that I work. I wouldn't know about everybody, but I promise you, in this specific area, and this is more than one school, this is consistent. But John was very attached. He would talk to his mom in a baby voice. Now he was older. He would talk to his mom in a baby voice. Mom would kind of do the same. And John got away with it a lot. Okay. So after dealing with Mom for a while, I realized that, all right, well, maybe, I recommended some things, and I also made myself available regularly. And I really supported that family. And, within the next year, John then moved up to the next grade level. Okay. John had a very religious teacher. You didn't know, but the staff knew. She approached kids with a very, how do I put this? It wasn't a more authoritative approach. It was more of a therapeutic approach. Okay. So for my veteran teacher, she didn't have that veteran teacher voice. Okay. She did everything within her power to try to help John in this case. Everything. She gave him rewards. She had lunch with him. She developed a relationship with him. She developed a relationship with the parents. Everything. And none of that stuff worked. Okay. I noticed that John would kind of be just walking around aimlessly on the campus in the mornings. I never really understood why, but I always used to, go get him and send him to school or to class, excuse me. But within the next year, John moved up to the next grade level, and the principal, sometimes I don't think you principals read your class list when you put them together, nor do I think you consult with the teachers. Yes, you are an administrative official at that school, and yes, you might know kids, but you do not know them the way their teacher knows them. And sometimes I think you guys don't consult with your teachers when you make your lists, even though I know you should. Because John, who's a very sensitive young man, for lack of a better word, with a very allowing parent, he was put in the absolute worst situation with the most thoroughly authoritative teacher ever. And I knew it was going to be a problem. Now, parents, pay very close attention to this, because your child was then put into a situation where they were going to get pushed to the absolute next level. I didn't hear from John that whole year. Not a single tear, nothing. except towards the end of the year. Okay, and now this is where it becomes very interesting. So I get a call that a teacher needs me to investigate something that happened because there was a student in the class that had hit another student. So when I go to investigate, I find out it was John, right? Out of all people, John punches another kid. This other kid that he punched tends to be a little bit of a troublemaker. We'll call him Steve. Steve is at a school that is, I'd say, 10% African American. He's got long wick dreadlocks, and he's very, I wouldn't say aggressive, but he likes, he was a boy. You know, he was a boy. He liked hanging out with his friends, and they horse played. Steve got in trouble a lot. Now, this happens. I knew that the year or prior, that parent had came in and told the principal that she did not want that child, John, in class with Steve anymore because Steve bullies John. Okay. So the administration team says, okay, fine. They move John to another class. John does fine. He still cries and stuff, you know, because this was the year prior. And, you know, everything's fine. Okay. This mom, she would do that. She'll come in and she'll demand things and she'll bark. So now, magically, how does John end up in the same class with Steve? And they get into it. Okay. Now administrators, why do y'all do this? Why do y'all do this? So I know the history of this. I get down. I do what I need to do. I go and talk to my administrator at this time. In my role, I have the power to basically give a consequence, right? In this instance, in my mind, said, okay, I'm going to suspend John because in this instance, not John, Steve, because in this instance, Steve started the fight. John never gets into a fight, and John clocked him. So guess what? That's a natural consequence, Steve. Don't pick on somebody you think is weaker than you. Okay? I'm going to suspend John or Steve because Steve's been into it. He's been getting in trouble. John never gets in trouble like that. Now, I go down to my assistant principal. She tells me, suspend them both. She doesn't even think about it. Suspend them both. I go, both of them? Yeah, both. I mean, now I'm getting in trouble for this. I don't know why administrators, you do this. Why am I getting in trouble? Why am I getting yelled at? At this point, I don't even care. I'm going to get it over with. This is what you want me to do? All right, cool. I know this mom's going to give me pushback. I'm not worried about pushback, but I'm doing what I'm told. Okay. Mind you, a relationship with your assistant principal is big because had I had a good relationship, and this could be another story time with my assistant principal, I'd have said to her, well, I don't think you want to do that because the parent already came in and asked them to be split. And this happened before and you were in the meeting. I know you don't remember a lot because you got a lot on your plate, but this is the issue. So I say, okay, fine. So I go and I call Steve's mom. Steve's mom and I have a very good relationship, and I let her know what happened. And you know, she was like, all right, fine. Mind you, I've done a lot to connect with these families. I would go to Steve's football games, and really try to put him under my wing. His coach is actually somebody that I work closely with in another school district. So mom was like, all right, I'm sorry, Dr. Matos, and she came and got him. No problem. Now I'm gonna go call John's mom, and I know what's gonna happen. John's mom's gonna give that pushback. But the issue is that in my mind, I'm like, maybe she's not, because what you don't know is, on top of me spending pretty much every other day with John the year before, John has this manipulation thing with his mom, and he uses a completely different voice with his mom. And John has been late to school 75 days and has 25 days absent. So if you're asking why John wasn't heard of, that's because John was never here. And mom would come in and drop him off every day and think it's all right, to the point where she would just let him out the car. She knows she got to sign him in, but she'll let him out the car and just drive off. So I'm sitting there like, okay, I got a relationship with mom. I'm going to call her. She knows she's been messing up all year long. Everything will be fine. Well, mom lit into me. She lit right into me. You're not going to suspend him because he didn't start that fight. I agree. Yeah. And I bet you it was Steve. Yes, ma'am, it was Steve. I met with you twice. Now she's saying she met with me twice. She didn't meet with me twice. She met once. She met with a whole nother team and then just was so irate that she just associated me with that team, which is something that also happens in schools. So after going back and forth with mom for, a few minutes on the phone, mom says, I'm sending dad down. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Matos. However, I am not a pushover. I'm 6'9", 300 pounds, and I've played all kinds of sports at very high levels. So when parents try to intimidate me, I tend to just look at them. Okay. So I said the same thing. Well, all right. Well, we'll see you when you get down here. Mind you, me and my assistant principal have not been eye to eye. We both joined that school at the same time, and she seems pretty intimidated by me, which is fine because I don't feel like I present myself that way. I do have an aspiration to move myself into a position of a policy maker, so I can see how that could be intimidating. So I call my assistant principal and say, I text her. I say, hey, John's mom's on the way, just to let you know. No response. I have specifically instructed John's mom to discuss it with my assistant principal because she is now angry that the principal, our assistant principal, and the principal knew that they were not supposed to be in the same class. Now we're going to suspend her son by getting bullied by the same kid that she had asked him to be asked to be removed, or asked her son that her son be removed. And now this automatically makes it a school problem. In my head, I'm laughing because I knew this. I guess that's kind of my fault. But principals, be better. Be better. You have to collaborate. You have to keep track of these things. So dad doesn't show up, obviously. That's something that always happens too. Mom shows up. She's already angry. She won't look me in the eye. I walk in and I go down. I do not have any intention on meeting with this woman at this point. At this point, she's going to meet with my assistant principal who made the decision. On my way down, I see my principal and she's looking at me and I'm looking at her, and me being the person that I am, I'm not letting her go in there. She doesn't know anything. I'm going to go support her. So I went in. We all sit there for about 5 seconds. And if anybody has taken any leadership course or anybody who knows how to basically direct a conversation, the most powerful thing is silence. If somebody says something or if somebody is argumentative or is pushing back, sometimes silence just works. I'll sit there and I'll just look at them, and whoever talks first loses. So I lost this time because I wanted to get this thing over with. And I said, all right, well, since nobody's going to talk, let me just go ahead and go through it. This is what happened. Both students were suspended. That's where we're at. Mom turns to me and says, oh, is that where we're at? Now I'm starting to twitch because, anybody who has been in an administrative role knows that sometimes parents just get under your skin because now this child, and it's her responsibility. It's not the child. This child has been late to school 75 plus times. He's been absent 25 plus times. Why do you have a say, parents? When you do that and you haven't asked for help and you dodge all the truancy calls, why do you think you could just come in schools and just say what you want? That's not how it works. I promise you, schools are not daycares. They're not. There are real educators in there that really want to educate. You don't get to come in and just say what you want. In other districts, I promise you that wouldn't happen. 'Cause I've seen it. In this particular district, meh. And I know you teachers know. I know you teachers know. And I know you leaders know too, because you can't do anything about it. Right? And you hate it. So she says, yeah, so is that where we're at? I look at my principal. My principal looks at me with like a look on her face because she didn't know. She goes, well, right now, this is what happened. And so, yes, they both got in trouble. She didn't say both got suspended. She said both got in trouble. Mom lays into her. I met with you twice, and I told you that he needs to be moved from this class, and he should not be in class with this student. Now I sit back and I'm feeling bad because my principal also knew that, but forgot. My assistant principal was the one that really set this whole thing off, and magically, she didn't want to take the meeting. Leaders, why do you think that's okay? Why do you set people up for that? You knew you messed up. You knew you messed up. You didn't want to take that meeting. That mom was going to tear you up. So you get people like me to go in there and take the fall for you. And me, in this case, yeah, I don't feel like I was stupid in this case because there was one of my colleagues was in there. I wasn't going to let her go down in the fire. So the principal says, you met with us? I look at the principal. She looks back at me. She says, okay, John comes down. John's not going to get suspended, right? Mind you, this is the exact situation that I had cooked up in my head when it all happened in the first place. John walks in, and he's like a little round guy, and he twinkle toes up to his mom. He grabs her face, and he calls her, Mommy, thank you so much, Mommy, and gives her a little kiss on him and walks off. John's little, but he's older. And Mom's like, ooh, my baby. Makes my skin crawl. Because I got a son too. He's gonna be a son. He's gonna be a young man. And that's not a thing at that age. Right? So Mom leaves. My principal's sitting in there. I look at her. I say, where's your partner? She goes, I don't know. I come out. Assistant principal sitting in her office. And she's just looking at me like, what happened? Who do y'all think y'all are? From a person and from a teacher's perspective, or a person that is not a principal and an assistant principal, who do y'all think y'all are? What makes you think that you can put people in places because you don't want to deal with something and your job literally is to deal with them? I don't know, but it just always gets me because there's so many leaders like that. They only delegate the things that they're afraid to deal with. But then they don't want you. They're intimidated by you. Right? Anyway. Today's day and age, we have kids, right? We have young men and young ladies, whatever else you want to say, and they're coming up through the ranks, and we're treating them like if they're babies all the way up through. And in reality, as a parent, you are crippling this kid. You're showing them there's no urgency in learning. School doesn't matter. Here, come to school at 8:30, 9 o'clock. You're late 75 days. What makes you think you can come in and tell the school what to do and your kid don't even come? And then the teacher gets in trouble when that kid doesn't pass the assessment and gets her evaluation points docked because you don't bring your kid to school? Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. This story is kind of a warning for parents because there's a lot of there's not all teachers are nice people. That's just the way it works. Not all people are nice people. So not all teachers are nice people. There are some teachers that are going to be spiteful to your kid because they are getting paid based off of your kid's performance, and you're not bringing him to school. You really have to consider that the people you're dealing with are people. And in the end, whatever happens, regardless of whether that person is a great educator or a not so great educator, it comes down with how you treat them. If you hold your kid accountable, they're going to get more things. It's just the way it works. Oh, yeah. And for my assistant principal, the one who dodged the meeting but created the problem, she texted me later on and apologized, but not for not being there. She apologized for not preparing my principal for the meeting. Like she ain't create the problem. Some leaders just don't get it.
Let's get into it.